Okay, we are all set to begin this live stream. Let me close out this window here. All right, how's everyone doing out there? Hope everyone is doing really well on this Monday, July 20th. If you guys can see the stream, if you can hear me, let me know in the chat. And with me today to discuss a what if, God forbid, God help us, what if, in my opinion, a God help us, what if, is from Moscow, Mr. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk. Peter, how are you doing?
Oh, great, because this conversation we'll have will be a good warm-up for the program I do later this afternoon. Because it's essentially, the topic of my program is, why is the president lagging in the polls? Okay, we're kind of doing the glass that's half empty, I'm doing it half full. So it's the same thing.
Right. Right, half empty, very much like Joe Biden, I guess.
Well, that's full empty, okay?
That's full empty. All right, and from London, we have the Oracle of London, Mr. Alexander Mercurs. Alexander, how are you?
I'm very, very well. It's a beautiful, bright day here. We've had amazing weather this spring, summer, and it's quite astonishing, actually. I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, it's been the most beautiful weather I can remember. The hot weather, yeah. My dogs are finding it struggling because it's so hot, but that's all I would say. My wife revels in it.
All right, let's see where people are joining us from real quick as we wait for more people to join us on this live stream. Shipbuilding expert in Belgium, London calling Nigel. Hello from Italy. Hello from New York City. What time is it in New York right now? It's the middle of the night, early morning. Let's see, loud and clear says that what if Hillary becomes vice president? Okay, we'll discuss the Hillary angle as well.
Indeed.
Hello from sunny South Wales. Hello from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Hello from Australia, from Melbourne. Hello from Russia. Elisabetta, how are things in Russia? I believe Russia is raining right now. How's Moscow right now, Peter?
We had scattered showers. The sun keeps coming in and out. But as Alexander Mercurs pointed out for London, I can say the same thing about Moscow. This is the best summer we have had in my memory. I mean, I've been here for almost, 22 years. This is really, really nice. And when it does rain, it evaporates really quickly. So it's great to be outdoors in the middle of a pandemic. It's weird.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. From the Netherlands, hello. Greetings from Amsterdam, from Queensland, Australia, from Scotland, from Honolulu, Hawaii, from France, New Zealand, Germany, Slovenia, Serbia. I've got just came today, my Serbia mug, my Serbia magic mug. Really beautiful, really pretty mug. I'm also wearing a new Canada bright as well.
Did you design them yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, good eye.
Yeah.
There he is.
There's the UK one as well. Do you have any other ones there?
Absolutely. I've got, since we're talking about the US, there they are.
All right. So we're talking about the US. The US one is really nice too. I like that one.
Yeah, I like it.
That was really nice. All right. So from Liverpool, Berlin, Manchester, more people from France, from Kyoto, Japan. All right. Great to have you here. All right. So let's get started. So what if creepy, sleepy Joe Biden actually becomes the POTUS, the president of the United States? First question to Peter. Peter, if Biden were to win in November, will the entire pandemic thing go away? In the media terms, not in the real life terms. I'm saying the media coverage of it and the way they present it. Will it just...
I think they would frame it in a very different way. I think that, yes, definitely would frame it in a very different way. Basically, that what can you do? That's what it will be. What can you do? And essentially, in many ways, that's what the situation really is. That's how the media covers it. All right. I think that certainly they'll present it in a different way that will absolve the administration of any kind of culpability. But what's really going to happen if Biden is elected, you're going to see a huge civil war inside the Democratic Party. And of course, the Republicans will have their post-mortem, and I don't know what conclusions they will draw, because they simply just didn't back the president. They didn't back their party leader. I mean, that's quite obvious, with notable exceptions. Okay, but what's happening in the Democratic Party now is very, very interesting, because Joe Biden's an empty suit, and we all know that. Okay, and I'm not trying to be vicious or mean or anything, but I mean, he's not really all there, and that's why he's so appealing to the establishment of the party, is that they'll be able to control him. Now, control him to what? Defend off the Bernie bros. That's what it's going to be, but not about the Republicans. Okay, just imagine a world without Donald Trump. Can you imagine that? What are the Democrats going to do? And that what they'll do is they'll turn on themselves. Okay, I think the media will regret the day that Donald Trump, when he does, either in January of next year or 4 years from now, they will regret him. There's such a wonderful mind that they go mining every single day. The media landscape will change dramatically irrespective of when Donald Trump leaves.
Alexander, if Biden does become POTUS, we saw actually, I think we have a lot of people from Australia in the house right now on this live stream. I think Australian intelligence threw out a video of what's going on in China with regard to the Uyghurs, and that's making its rounds. I saw a BBC interview on it. But in connection to Biden, what would Biden do with China?
I think it will just continue,
compared to Trump, yes.
I think it will just continue much in the same way, but without perhaps the same energy that we've seen with the Trump administration. I think that now the divorce, if you like, between China and the US, the Cold War, if you prefer, is now baked in the cake. I don't think that's going to change. Where I think it will be different is that, of course, the instruments that will be pulling it will become less. The government will become even less coherent than it is now. The United States, if Biden is elected, will have a president in name only. I think that's the important point to understand. The people who will be running things will be various members, parts of the bureaucracy, people within the Democratic Party. What we will have is
names, such as who? Give us some names that come to mind. Yeah, seriously, Pelosi, for example, or Schumer. I mean,
Pelosi, Schumer, Schiff. We could very easily see Schiff being brought into the administration. I think it's entirely possible. There's been talk about him.
Samantha Power.
Exactly, all of those people,
Susan Rice,
even exactly, and all the various elements of the permanent bureaucracy. People like the Christopher Wray, the FBI director. They will be running things. The uniformed military people like General Mattis. He could even be brought back for all I know. Those sort of people will be running things. We will have about 6 months of extraordinary, fabricated, orchestrated good feelings, euphoria. And then after that, there will be a perception that the United States is actually drifting. Because that's what will be.
It's a little bit off, but I mean, I don't know how many of our viewers saw the Barr's presentation on China, which I found to be really quite interesting. My first reaction after listening to it for about 15 minutes was, it's 20 years too late, okay? It's just simply too late, because this decoupling, okay, right now, I think we are in a Cold War. And if we want to use the term divorce, fine, I will use it too. But divorces are messy, really messy. And you're going to have to, in reference to Barr's speech, you're going to have to drag the captains of industry kicking and screaming, because they made a fortune. They made a fortune off of this engagement with China. And I don't fault China at all. I mean, if you want to sell out your country, sell out your middle class, that's your business. What's your price? And they took it, all right? I don't blame the Chinese, all right? I blame the elites, the American political elites, the media elites, the academic elites. I blame them for this. And it is a reckoning. And there's going to be no covering that up. Because if you're going to go down the path of divorce, it's going to be messy and it's going to be painful. And you know what? It's not going to solve the immediate economic problems of the United States, not by a long shot. All right? Because I mean, look, I mean, Pharmaceuticals, okay. What percentage of the United States is dependent on China? I don't know. It's very high, okay? So if the United States is going to declare a Cold War, then the Chinese say, okay, well, we won't sell it to you. How many years is it going to take for the US to retool a pharmaceutical industry in the United States? It's going to take a while, and it's going to be very, very expensive. Barr's speech was precedent, but it's really late in the game. And the Chinese already know that. So, I mean, I agree with Alexander Mikiris. I don't think it will significantly change. I think the tone would change, obviously. But I recommend to everyone an article that I think it's still up on the American Conservative by Pat Buchanan. I mean, does the United States really want a Cold War with China? The cost will be very high. It's very different than the Soviet Union. It's very different than the crusade against communism. Because while the Soviet Union was militarily, in a technological sense, a peer of the United States, it wasn't economically in other spheres. China is in every respect, if not ahead of the US and in a technological sphere. So, it's not going to be deja vu all over again. This is a very, very different confrontation, very different. And there's no guarantee that it will end peacefully, and there's no guarantee that the US is going to end up on top.
Alexander, China prefers Biden, Trump, or it doesn't care?
No, it doesn't really care. I mean, I think that's probably true. I mean, I think the Chinese, I've been reading the Chinese media. Global Times, by the way, is indispensable to get an insight into what China is thinking on any particular topic. But you can also look at other places like the People's Daily, which is now online. I think the Chinese are not really looking for any particular politician in the United States because they've been looking at the political situation. And in fact, I was just reading something that on Global Times, and they pointed out that this is a bipartisan view in the United States. Democrats, Republicans, everybody. But I do think that there is a difference between Biden and Trump in the sense that I think that Trump is able to talk to Xi Jinping and is able to speak with Xi Jinping, and he has his faculties about him, and he's got those sorts of abilities. Biden, it's more difficult in some ways because if the Chinese speak to Biden, they don't really know whom they're talking to because he's not really there. We would have a very strange situation, which has never existed in the United States before, as far as I know, where the president really is, I think Peter described it, an empty suit. It would be a very, very weird situation. And to drift into a Cold War with a superpower and have an empty suit leading you seems a very strange idea to me.
Don't you think she would say, but maybe I should talk to Hunter?
Well, quite, yeah.
This is an interesting question, though, Peter. How would a Biden presidency engage in geopolitics and foreign policy? I mean, how would he, for example, the travel schedule, how would Biden possibly do it? He can barely campaign at this point. How would he actually go through the rigors of
my sense
foreign policy?
My sense is that, if he makes it into the White House, it'll be just made very clear to him by the cronies, that basically the former Obama cronies, they're just going to surround him. If you need to go out, go to the Rose Garden, take a walk. Okay, we'll take care of everything else. Okay, we'll take care of it. No live speeches, all be pre-recorded, and it'll be the interagency consensus that will take over foreign policy again. All right, and the Vindmans of this world, okay, the Fiona Hills of this world. That's what they're going to do. They don't need to. He doesn't need to travel. They don't want him to travel. They'll roll him out when they need him, and that'll be it. And you know what? I think you'd be perfectly fine with that. He's already said that if he wins, he's only going to be there for 4 years. He wants to be a gateway or a bridge for the Pete Buttigiegs of this world. Okay, I mean, but your point is well taken. This and Alexander Mikiris hit it spot on. Is that what are world leaders to make of this? Is this like an interregnum of 4 years now? I mean, is U.S. foreign policy on autopilot? It will create a lot of very a lot of questions about what direction and who's making these decisions. It's going to be a very weird transition, and we're looking at a transition of 4 years, not 6 months.
Quite so. I mean, can I just also say something? I mean, the American system really isn't constructed to have to work without a president. I mean, it's already, I mean, all these Obama people, the interagency and all of this, I mean, these are actually quite disputatious people. All American administrations are dysfunctional to some degree. You need an active POTUS to try to hold the thing together. If the POTUS isn't doing it, who will? It's going to be very odd and very, very unstable. And as I said, come back to what I said before. If you're going to drift into a Cold War with a superpower like China, particularly such a purposeful superpower, with a very, very, very functional government, do you really want to do it, you know, with a sort of empty suit in the Oval Office? It doesn't really make very much sense to me.
Isn't the point of a Biden presidency, though, listening to you guys, the point of it is to have this 4-year kind of hiatus from the US's current system? In other words, a transition from a system where the president plays a major role to transition the US into more of a totalitarian, authoritarian country. So you have Biden is not the bridge to the next Buttigieg, so to speak. It is the bridge towards a totalitarian United States of America.
The Biden administration, a Biden administration can be a gateway to some very radical changes to the political system. I'm thinking about ending the Electoral College, adding Washington, D.C. as a state, which of course will put Washington, D.C. votes 99 or 101% Democrat, okay? I mean, that's 2 senators, okay? Creating the imbalance in the Senate. Up to 20, 30 million amnestied people, which will change the electoral demographics radically in the United States. I mean, the gateway, the transition is to one-party rule forever. Okay, that is it. And that's why I go back to my original answer. My original point is that when we're in this environment, we're going to see the establishment at war with the Bernie bros, with the progressives here. I mean, they've smoothed this all out. What did they call the task force? Which is a complete joke, okay? That is just to keep the Elizabeth Warrens and Bernie Sanders and people like that at bay. And everyone knows that once they cross the finish line with Joe, that's when this civil war is going to get really heat up, okay? Because the progressives are not going to give him 1 inch at all, okay? What they want to do now, and what they've been inoculated to, is that, you know, just support us now. We got to get the big bad orange man out, and then we'll settle scores. Which, of course, the establishment, they're completely dishonest, okay? What they will do is they will go to war with the progressives, okay? They're not going to give them anything, nothing, zero, okay? Not 1 cabinet position, nothing, okay? They're the real enemy. The real enemy in January 2021 is going to be the progressives for the Democrats, not the Republicans. The Republicans could be out of power forever on a national level if the changes that I just mentioned go into effect.
I think this is actually exactly the point. I mean, the key point about a Biden presidency is it's going to change foreign policy in any decisive way. It'll make it more aimless. In fact, it may make it completely aimless, but its purpose is to change the political system within the United States. I mean, first of all, you've got to bury all the Durham investigations. That goes without saying. But the other thing is to carry out fundamental political restructuring of the political system to prevent a Donald Trump presidency ever, anything like that ever happening again, to institutionalize the rule of a certain wing of the Democratic Party. So you allow unrestricted immigration. You have exactly what was the agenda that Peter was saying.
Open borders.
You open borders. You dole out, citizenship, right to vote. Exactly, right to vote to all of these people, because of course that helps you get ever bigger majorities.
Also, also packing the court.
Exactly. You pack the courts. Exactly. You do away with the electoral college, for which an enormous head of steam is now building up. By the way, I think that is a disastrous idea for many reasons, but we will talk, we will talk about that no doubt later. But that is it. That is the agenda that these people who are pushing Biden are really pursuing. Now, if you want a fundamental economic reorganization of the United States, what Peter was talking about when he was talking about China, industrial restructuring, building up pharmaceutical industries, doing all those things. Well, Biden isn't going to do that. He doesn't have any idea how to do that. He would never, even if he had all his faculties about him, he's not really about that anyway, nor are his backers ultimately interested in those things, because what concerns them is power in Washington. They want to be in control at the center, not because they are really, have any great vision for how to restructure the United States in a productive way, so as, make it an industrial superpower again, but because from their point of view, it is power at the center and their own position wielding that power, that is what is really important to them.
What they want is just to continued control of the financial institutions, because that's where they generate their wealth. Okay, yes. and that's how they maintain their power. It'll be very interesting what kind of deal that they would make. See, one of the things I truly regret, and because there's the reference, of course, is Russia, is that I was watching Sunday Morning Futures, and this morning, so it was on last night in the US, and this constant demonization of China. Fine, China doesn't have to be your friend. I think it can be actually a competitive adversary. Fine, that's international politics. That's the way it works, okay? But the way it's demonized, it reminds me very much how the media did and continues to do to Russia, okay? And the case of Russia, I know very well, and I know when it's really flimsy. The Russians are hacking into the research of discovering the vaccine to Corona. Well, I mean, just absolutely nonsense. I mean, this is laughable. Another hoax out there, okay? But now they're doing it with the Chinese, okay? The Uyghurs tape. I don't know what that is. I mean, I guess the government's never lied to us before. I don't take it at face value. Not at all. Not at all, okay? And the whole thing with Hong Kong, well, good job. Hong Kong lost all of the freedoms that it had when it became free of British rule, okay? I mean, it was the law of unintended consequences. It was this forced regime change is a flop, an absolute disaster, as usual. So, I mean, to kind of go for a full circle here, what's going to be very interesting is that Alexander's right. They want to maintain their power, but what tools are they going to use to maintain that power, okay? Because I seriously don't see an industrialized policy to reindustrialize the United States, because then you got to nationalize all these companies, okay? And that's when they're going to start having impeachment proceedings against him, okay, against Biden, okay? The kernel of it all is this: nothing will significantly change. Well, you know what that means? Continued decline.
Alexander, Russia. Peter mentioned Russia. I'll give you the same question with China. Russia, Trump, Biden, doesn't care. And Biden's involvement in Ukraine, his heavy involvement in Ukraine, would that mean that Biden would ramp up that conflict again?
I think he would, and I think if we see a Biden presidency, we will see renewed pressure on Russia. The Russians are ready for it. Yep. They've been preparing for it for a long, long time. They've come through the pandemic crisis with their financial reserves growing even more. They've set aside massive rainy day funds. They're prepared for it. So I mean, they're not saying bring it on. I think they understand that with Biden in the White House, the pressure on them will grow, but they'll see it off. They're becoming more confident about that. I think all the time.
The interesting caveat to all of that is that one of the cardinal mistakes that Angela Merkel made during her chancellorship was to support the regime change policy in Ukraine, which obviously is a mess, okay? And it will continue to be a mess. And now, and maybe we can talk a little bit about Nord Stream, but I mean, we see cleavages now, very serious cleavages with the EU and the United States on economic and particularly energy security issues here. I don't think that's going to change. And I think it's really interesting because Angela Merkel actually said that a few weeks ago. It doesn't really matter who's in the White House, that there's going to be a continual drift apart. Because, I mean, the Europeans know, I mean, the European Union's in big trouble, okay? It doesn't need the American presidency to be meddling inside of it, okay? They need to get their own house in order, if that's even possible. Now, if we have a Biden administration that becomes activist and aggressive again with Ukraine, I'm not particularly convinced that the Europeans are going to want to go along with it. I mean, we know, you know, the way this pandemic makes time estimation hard, but I guess it was like 4 or 5 months ago before all this started, is that the Europeans just basically threw up their arms and said to the Ukrainians, you've got to deal with the Russians on your energy needs. You've just got to do it. We're out. We've had enough of this nonsense, okay? And see, what I'm getting at is that you can have a goal, but I mean, are you going to have the tools this time round to do it? And I think a lot, and what happens is it really, irrespective if it's Trump or Biden, the United States is turning into a coalition of one on one issue after another, okay? And if we do have a Biden administration, people will say, who is that? What are they going to do? When is it going to be over? Okay, and there's another 4 years lost.
Ukraine has two very strong backers in the West. One is the United States, or at least certain elements within the United States. The other is Britain. In Germany, they are exhausted by the whole thing. They are completely disillusioned about the whole Ukrainian mess. Just as Peter said, they are anxious to rebuild their economic relations with Russia, which they see as absolutely essential to themselves. You will always forget this thing about Germany. Germany is a trading power. It needs to export. It produces too much for itself, so it needs to export. It needs to have economic links. German industry, German businesses, 10, 15, 20 years ago decided that Russia was the place that they were going to pile into, and they were going to do all the great investments there. Then Ukraine came along. They thought that would be resolved very quickly. They seriously underestimated the Russian resistance to what they were trying to do in Ukraine. And now they're completely exhausted by it. I think that a Biden crusade on behalf of Ukraine would go down like a lead balloon in Germany. And if we're talking about, Germany, Italy, France even are deeply disillusioned by the whole affair.
You know, and the interesting thing too is that if we do see an activist Biden administration vis-a-vis Ukraine, what is that going to do with Russia-Chinese relations if the new Cold War with China is going on? It will only increase that close relationship. So I think even, there are the political, Atlantic Council and all these other kind of lunatics. I mean, they obviously want it because that's what their career is all about. Yes. I'm not really convinced that the brass at the Pentagon are going to say, do we really need a two-front Cold War now? Really? Do we need that? I mean, of course, give us, spend more money on all kinds of things. I mean, and what we've seen over the last couple of years is that the Russians have made it very clear that with their defensive posture, with high technology and supersonic hardware, I mean, they're prepared. Alexander Makiris is right. I mean, they're prepared financially, militarily. Getting re-engaged in, I mean, of course, all these Russiagate investigations will disappear. I guess that will disappear from the ether as well. Yeah. But I mean, the American activity in Ukraine has been a disaster, and a disaster for the Ukrainians. Is that something they're going to want to do again? It remains to be seen. But if we have the whole Obama crew back, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, these people defy logic, okay? If you fail at something, maybe you should learn your lesson. No, they just double down and triple down. So it's not good news.
The trouble is they're all very personally invested in Ukraine. I mean, some of them financially invested in Ukraine, which we've talked about, others institutionally invested in Ukraine. And of course, the other force, which I think is now becoming clear, has played a major role in the politics in Washington and in the Democratic Party, especially, is Britain. Britain is not interested in China. Britain is obsessed with Russia because Russia is the big power, the great power in Britain's neighborhood. So they will try to pull the United States into continuing its confrontation with Russia. And that's not to be underestimated, given the surprising amount of influence that Britain still has in Washington, which always puzzles me.
Yeah, a malignant form of influence.
Absolutely, no, I make that absolutely clear. I mean, I think Americans need to ask themselves sometimes, you know, why are we pursuing British interests or British foreign policy obsessions and neglecting our own interests instead? But you know, it's Britain has been driving this to a surprising extent, this confrontation with Russia. These stories we've just heard, these absurd stories. I mean, I read our idiot foreign minister Dominic Raab's ludicrous statement about you know, Russian interference in the December 2019 election. I mean, you know, we have all of this, all of these stories, they're constantly coming out of London. The Steele dossier originated here. Now we have all these, the Litvinenko affair was here. The Skripal affair was here. All of these things come out of London. And it's becoming increasingly clear to me that this is not chance. There is some kind of pattern. And anybody who, you know, sits back and looks at this could see it.
I mean, but can we not say that a Biden presidency will lead to a lot more war and conflict, not only in Ukraine, for example, but for Syria, say? I mean, I think there's no doubt when Biden comes to office, it's pretty much the Obama rat pack back in charge. And that means people like power. And there's no doubt that power would like another crack at Ukraine, but without a doubt, another crack at Assad and Syria.
Yes.
And I think just to give some pushback on the Germany and the Europe thing, can you not also make the argument that Merkel's stance towards Ukraine and towards the United States, distancing herself a little bit, is a factor of Trump? And the minute that Obama rat pack comes back into power, Germany may just go along with whatever that rat pack has to say. I mean, you can.
I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced of that because you know, personalities come and go, but national interests, you know, that how they define it, and I think that the Germans see, particularly with Nord Stream, is that the negative influence the United States wants to pursue, and particularly when it comes to the European economy, and it's just not in their national interest. And like I said, I mean, the European Union has enough problems right now. They don't need an outsider determining their energy policy. It's something that's going to be done. But I mean,
didn't they give up their national interest, Peter, though, with Ukraine 7 years ago?
No, I think they thought it would work. I really believe they thought it would work. All right. I mean, they didn't realize that it could go south so easily, so fast, and so hard. And I lay that at Merkel's doorstep. I mean, you know, opening up the gates to immigration in 2015 in Ukraine. Those are her two legacy issues, and both of them were disasters. All right. So I'm not sure. I'm not convinced a change in personality is going to make it. We go back to what it was when Obama was president. Too many things have changed. Okay, and if you know what the U.S. is going to be doing, if the new Cold War with China is going to be in play, they're going to try to corral all their allies, and they're going to be, and like Alexander McCure just said, I mean, the British are not particularly interested in the China issue. They're going to be pulled into it, and they're going to be saying, oh, I'm not really sure I want to go there. And of course, the leadership of NATO is looking for something to do because they got nothing to do, and you know, they start talking about China and all that. But it doesn't necessarily represent how the constituent countries of NATO feel. I mean, you know, Macedonia, we didn't sign up to fight China. Okay. All right. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot more complex. I mean, there's no resetting of anything. Okay. I mean, people would like that, but I don't think the realities on the ground will make that even remotely possible now.
Can I just add some, you know, detail to what Peter just said? The British government, it has just been revealed, has actually apologized to China over the Huawei affair. The fact that they pulled out of the contracts with Huawei. And they basically indicated that if there's a change of policy in Washington, they will go back to Huawei. In other words, they're not really happy about what they've just done, but they've been forced into doing it. So the British are not interested in China at all. They want, if anything, good relations with China. They were looking to China to invest in Britain. And of course, the previous government of Cameron and Osborne was talking about a golden era of relations between China and Britain. So that's British policy. Their fixation is Russia, and they will be trying to pull the United States back into a confrontation with Russia, and they're not interested in China at all. With Germany, for Germany, their biggest export market now is China. Fact people aren't aware of. They are becoming increasingly, or they were becoming increasingly, invested in Russia also. Merkel made a disastrous mistake in 2014 when she went along with the Obama-Biden pressure to impose sectoral sanctions on Russia. And in fact, I remember an article about this in the Financial Times. German intelligence persuaded her to do it, which is, of course, German intelligence is very linked to US intelligence. They're all linked to each other. It told her that if they imposed sectoral sanctions, Russia would buckle within 6 months. She believed it. She was, they told her the oligarchs would either, the Russian oligarchs would either tell Putin, would either force Putin to change policy on Ukraine, or they would remove him. And she believed it. I mean, and of course, it turned out to be completely and disastrously wrong. And I can remember so well, there was this EU summit in Milan in late 2014, where Putin suddenly turns up, as confident and as secure and as strong as ever. And they're all astonished because they think that by this point, he ought to be on the ropes, and they find something completely different. So Merkel will welcome a change of presidency in the United States. Obviously, she far prefers Biden to Trump. She will be looking to make deals with Biden on all kinds of things, but she will not want more confrontation in Ukraine. That is not going to go down well in Germany at all. It would put her at odds with German business, and we mustn't forget that she's anyway going next year. This is her last year. She's committed herself to going. I've been told by people in Germany that, my concerns that she try and find a way of staying on are probably misplaced. So I don't think that this is going to lead to a change of policy on Ukraine.
Okay, I want to go back to my first answer. I think it's really underestimated here that the progressive elements of the Democratic coalition, they are anti-war, they are anti-interventionist, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on Biden if he goes back to the Obama foreign policy. I think we have to keep an eye on that. See, but
can you just clarify, Peter? When you mean progressives, are you meaning Bernie Sanders, who I think is very much pro-war? I don't think Bernie Sanders has taken a very strong stance against war.
We could go on issue by issue in foreign policy. I agree with you. However, Israel, Palestine, Syria, Yemen, I think they probably wouldn't say it too out loud, Russia as well, okay? I do see that there's a lot of fracturing going on right there. One thing that we haven't considered is the Iran deal. I mean, Biden is committed to going back to it, all right? I mean, we'll see how that plays out. I mean, this is all very, very complicated. That's why I keep stressing you change the person doesn't mean everything slips into place. It's not going to be very, very simple. Again, reiterating what we said at the very top, particularly if you have a president where you're not really sure if he's in control and you don't know who is in control, and you're going to have all these simmering disagreements in the winning coalition that Biden would be leading if he is elected president. So there's nothing seamless about this.
I mean, if the progressives, Peter, have a chance to get power, do you think they would actually avoid war? if it meant,
I think,
or would they go along with the establishment if it meant they could get power again?
I think that on a lot of them, I think that, getting out of Afghanistan, getting out of Syria, getting out of Yemen. Yes, I think that
Trump tried to do that. Trump's trying to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but see, that's the whole point. Is that you're going to see Biden needs these progressives to win, to get across the line. Okay, and the whole question is going to be voter turnout. That's going to be the biggest mystery that we're going to have to be watching here. Okay, because there isn't a whole lot of love for him. Obviously, the progressives are really angry. They're not going to be thrown a bone outside of these task force here, but they're making it very, very clear that we're not going to make it easy for you. Of course, we want Trump out, of course, okay? But once we cross the finish line together, you are beholden to us. And if you're not going to follow through, you will pay a price for it, all right? And I think, foreign policy from the progressives' point of view is different from the establishment for sure. Is it different on all issues? Of course not, all right? But it's going to be a lot more complicated. It's not seamless. It's not black and white.
I'm more skeptical. I'm going to say this straightforwardly. I mean, obviously there are some progressives who are perhaps, one could almost call them, real old left progressives, the kind of people who write on places like antiwar.com and Consortium News and those sort of places, the Caitlin Johnson type progressives, who are, of course, opposed to interventions. I don't think they represent what calls itself the progressive mainstream. I don't think those people are very interested in foreign policy, actually. I think, again, their overwhelming interest is in what goes on in the United States itself. Look at what we have been seeing this summer in the United States. We've been seeing statues toppled. We've been seeing all sorts of things like that going on. We haven't seen a rhetoric about anti-war, anti-imperialism, killing people of color in other countries. This isn't part of what this is all about at all, it seems to me. I think, on the contrary, this is my own view, I think if we see a Biden presidency, we're going to see the Samantha Power, Susan Rice type neoliberal, left progressive humanitarian interventionism coming through with renewed force. And we'll see it in places like Syria, we'll see it in places like Libya, we'll see it in all those places.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'd say the policy may be directed that way, but I'm not particularly sure how popular it will be. That's my point. That's my point, okay?
It isn't popular.
And that will create problems, all right? Because as we've been saying on our podcast from day one, foreign policy is bipartisan, okay? It definitely is here. But from the progressive right and the progressive left, they are slowly chipping away at it, okay? Not nearly as much as I would like, all of us would like, but it will be there. It's something that can't be dismissed. But Alexander Mercouris makes a wonderful point. Yes, Black Lives Matter in America, but not around the world, okay? That's very true.
Yeah. All right, so Black Lives Matter, what's going on inside the US? What would happen with the censorship and the free speech stuff and the wokeness?
No anti-monopoly stuff, that'll be shelved.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a Biden presidency, I kind of think to myself, will they just, for example, will Twitter say, okay, we got what we wanted, now we'll stop censoring? Or are they going to say, we got what we wanted, now we're going to destroy them? I mean, we're going to obliterate conservative voices. We're going to bury them.
Not the former.
Absolutely. I'm afraid I agree with that. I mean, these are people, first of all, they're not forgiving. I mean, I think this is an important thing to say. They're not going to say, well, because, we got Trump out of the White House, we can sit back and
you guys can stay on.
YouTube, exactly. This isn't the mindset at all. On the contrary, what we're going to see is a massive intensification of the culture war, because that's the only thing, to go back to the things that Peter was saying, that really brings the Democratic Party together. It's the only thing that they all have in common. I mean, it's the one thing that drives them all. So, it brings together the financier in Wall Street, the tech tycoon in San Francisco, and the Bernie Bros. There's the one thing they're all united for. So as I said, I think we're going to see it intensify, and I think we're going to see not just the culture war intensify, but its corollary. It's the thing that makes the culture war possible, which is the intensification of the control on social media and all of that. So I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, I already mentioned packing the Supreme Court. I mean, they'll do anything to start turning, putting their agenda into place here. And then I would say on the left, all the way to the progressive, they are. I mean, the establishment is afraid, so they'll bow down, okay? Because they're afraid of the mob. They very much are afraid of the mob. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi with, I don't know what she was wearing, but I mean, everybody taking a knee and all that. They're scared. They're scared. Oh, and that ridiculous woman over at the New York Times, Bari Weiss, I mean, what a disgrace. I mean, she was part of the mob, and then when she realized the mob was going to come for her, she opted out, okay? That is just such a pathetic comment on journalism and the political establishment in the United States.
I entirely agree, by the way, and I entirely agree with what Peter's just said about
I wonder if
to say that.
I mean, I wonder if what's going to happen with the I believe Yuri Bezmenov, that video that a lot of people sent around with the ex-Russian KGB guy, and he described what happens when the communists or the totalitarians get into power, and the first thing they do is the people they were using as their foot soldiers, the mob, these guys and the academics and all these guys that they were using to push the agenda and get them into power, they're the first ones they get rid of.
Well, so Black Lives Matter will disappear.
Yeah, so the first ones they get rid of, but then they go, so they go after them, they get rid of them, and then they crack down on the conservatives and the people of the right, the free speech people, the conservatives, the libertarians. Could a situation like that happen in the US? What would it be like to be a conservative white male living in America, in rural America, should Biden become president?
I think we've got to be very careful.
Come to Moscow.
I think you've got to be careful, by the way, about these comparisons between Russia and the US.
No, I mean I agree. I'm not saying it's copy paste, but it's theoretical, and we are speaking hypotheticals now.
I mean, just to say, I mean, the Bolshevik Party was a very, very tightly structured organization, and it had people like Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky. I mean, Biden and Schumer and Pelosi are not quite on that level. Let's be very clear. I mean, they're intellectually or whatever. I think the problem is actually even more profound in some ways, because at least those people in Russia created a functioning government. This, it seems to me, is so dysfunctional at so many ways. I think it's more like the French Revolution scenario, where essentially for the first 3 years, you get government by mob, because that was what was happening. You would have all these attempts by people in control to try to control the situation in France, and you get all these agitators coming, and they'd stir up a mob and they'd pull someone else down. So you would see a process, that's the risk of continuing radicalization. And that in some ways is as dangerous as the other scenario, because ultimately it does escalate and it makes it even more difficult.
I mean, let's look at just policy. I think the analogy is worth considering, okay? Because right now we have purity tests, okay? And who is pure, all right? And it's going to go up the ladder, all right? And let's look at a very popular policy, healthcare for all, okay, single payer. I mean, even among Republicans, people are interested in that. Okay, far more in the Democratic Party, but but you have corporate America that will fight tooth and nail against that. I mean, Alexander Mikiris is right. There's going to be a huge collision, because you have corporate America that they pay both sides. Okay, they want to make sure they can control whatever the outcome is. And it's no different this time around. But when you bring in people that are far left and these progressives, these are ideas that people you know, I mean, look at the Republicans. You know, we'll get rid of Obamacare. We'll get rid of Obamacare. Okay, and then when they had power, they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they still didn't do it. Why? Because corporate America. That pressure against corporate America is going to be much stronger, particularly if the Democrats win the Senate. Okay, if they control all branches of government, which is not inconceivable. There's going to be, again, I think both of you kind of underestimate the grassroots on the left, okay? I mean, they're willing to put up with this ridiculous empty suit, Joe Biden, to get rid of first their number one goal, to get rid of Trump. But then the landscape changes dramatically. And I think that the left is going to have a hard time keeping their troops in line. And if they don't, going back to Alexander Christopher's point, then they're going to have to go after them, okay? And that's going to be a mess, a real mess. And the Republicans will be on the sidelines saying, whoa.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing to understand, the thing that's really worrying, I think, about the situation in America is not that, you know, you have a sort of purposeful, disciplined party about to take control. It's that they are assisting in the breakdown of all forms of control, so that, you know, we see these, you know, crowds of people going around toppling statues and all this. There are not many people involved. The numbers of people who are involved doing these things is very small, but there is no resistance to them. And if there is a Biden presidency, those people are going to feel empowered. They're going to feel that they have even more force behind them, that there is going to be even less resistance to what they will do. And you will see things happening in universities, on social media. Statue toppling is going to be a very small part of it. It's going to obviously happen, but it's going to intensify. Eventually, it will result in a reaction, because in every society, people do ultimately want an orderly system of life, and they will tire of that and they will react against it. But the damage that could be done in the process will be enormous, and it will deepen hugely the problems of the United States.
And let's add to all of this here. We've focused a lot on foreign policy, and we've focused on the culture wars, but there's nothing that's come out of the DNC or
No.
Biden. How are they going to fix this economy? How are they going to do it?
No.
I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I mean, when the most powerful, richest people in the world, in the history of the world, when they got their check cut, everybody said, okay, you know, let's go home for vacation. I mean, I was just watching Senator Kennedy on the weekend shows. I mean, and he was asked point blank, are you going to be working on a new stimulus / bailout package? And he was kind of ho-hum about it. Ho-hum. I mean, 1/3, 34% of Americans missed their rent payment and their mortgage last month. And it's only going to get worse. And then we have all these different layers that we've been talking about on this podcast. I mean, I don't see any real answers, because America has been hollowed out by these people. They hollowed it out. You can't fix it in a matter of weeks or months. You're going to need something of a Marshall Plan, when there would be consensus across the aisle, okay, to start really seriously reconsidering how the economy functions. And you're going to have to bring in single payer. You just simply, I mean, this pandemic has shown that. It's shown that. And nobody in the ruling elites want to talk about that.
No,
that's just verboten. It's absolutely nonsense. Okay, the decisions that are going to have to be made about the economy. We can talk about the statues, and I think that is important. Okay, and Black Lives Matter and all this, they are important in their own way. But the economy is what affects everybody. Okay, you don't have an opinion about a bad economy; you live in one. And I don't see the Biden people have any real solutions whatsoever, except for nothing will fundamentally change. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I don't think it's their priority right now.
Yeah.
In the next, say, 4 months, their priority right now is keep the economy tanking so you can get rid of Trump. I mean, the overarching theme for them is get rid of Trump. at all costs. Even if you have to sink the US and tank the entire US, at least you get rid of Trump. That's what they're focusing on. So I think the economy for them is going to be something, like I said, God forbid they win the White House, it'll be something that they'll discuss after the fact.
Yes.
Once again, if they even care at that point, because for the elites and for the people that have the power and the money, they may not care.
Well, they don't care because they're becoming richer. This is they like the system as it is. Because
and once they change the system, Alexander, once they change it and they can't lose power, there you have it. All right. 1 hour. Great. We'll get to some super chats, but final question to both of you guys. And let's see how you all answer. We have what, 4 months now to the election?
Yes.
106 days.
All right. How do you guys see things playing out?
I am fairly sure that the polls will start to tighten, despite the fact that the pandemic is clearly a huge problem for Donald Trump. But by the way, it's a polling gap which in historic terms is not so huge. Trump's problem is not that he couldn't in theory close this polling gap. It's the point that Peter made at the beginning, which is that he's never been able to break through beyond his electoral base. But I think the polls will close. This is my own personal view.
Well, it always gets down to the battleground states. That's what it's going to get. So national polls, who cares? And it doesn't mean anything whatsoever. It's going to be, I mean, you should be looking at, most importantly, the two states of Florida and Texas. Okay, that's where you really need to be looking. Okay, and Trump is in trouble in both. All right, so there's a lot of time to come. This is the most bizarre election season ever. And Alexander Maciaras is right. I mean, it will tighten up because people are, I mean, we have to remember the four of us that are talking right now, we're really interested in politics. Okay. Yes. But most people are going to, am I going to get my rent paid? I missed my mortgage for the third month in a row. This is what people are thinking about. And in states like Florida and Texas, if you're really seriously thinking about that, you're going to wonder what the hell went wrong. And I have to fault Trump very seriously. I wish he would stop talking about the stock markets. Okay, it's such an affront to middle America. They're not invested in those exchanges at all. Okay, and he would do himself a big favor by stop doing that, because that is just looking at it's like, you know, living on Earth and describing the moon. It doesn't mean anything to anybody when you can't pay the rent. Okay, and if you're going to be thrown out of your job again, and if you don't know if this payroll protection plan is going to be extended or not, these are what things people are thinking about right now. And if you're in one of those battleground states, you know, that's going to be a real issue for you. It always gets down to economics. At the end of the day, that's how people are swayed by vast majorities.
I wonder what the psychology of the voter is going to be in those battleground states.
Yeah.
I wonder if they say, you know, I'm not going to vote, if they say I'm going to pin this on the Trump White House, or if they say, you know, I don't want to take the risk and put in an empty suit like Biden and stick with Trump, because he did well. He was doing well before.
It's turnout. You're absolutely right. Turnout is going to make or break this election one way or another, because we can't discount the possibility of people just throwing their hands up. It's like, none of these guys have any answers that affect my life.
Yes.
And I think that is a very serious consideration here. People are going to just say, the hell with the system. It doesn't work. It's broken.
It's possible. It's a big possibility.
Absolutely it is. I would point out that if there is a low turnout, that tends to help Trump, whose electoral base is much more engaged with him than it is with Biden. So low turnout would logically tend to strengthen Trump's chances rather than Biden's. I think it will be a fairly low turnout, because also the effect of the pandemic is probably going to reduce turnout in many places. So we'll see what happens.
And what do you guys make of the silent majority is what they're called, the silent minority?
Yeah, I think that is, I personally think, I don't know there's a majority, but I certainly think that there is a silent majority of people who are frankly appalled by the manifestations of the cultural war that they're seeing around them. I mean, who don't like to see statues toppled, neighborhoods burnt down, people besieged in their homes, those sort of things. So I think that would help Trump. The question is whether that's going to be a big enough swing in his favor to overcome, the economic issues. I think it's possible. I think it's something that again affects people in a very personal way, and should not be discounted, actually.
Yeah, but Trump needs to be. I watched the Mount Rushmore speech, which I thought was brilliant. I thought it was one of the best speeches.
Yeah, I think it's the best speech.
And and the one that he had in Warsaw in the early days of his administration, I thought that was a really good one too. But I think it misses the point about how people are feeling economically. I think he talked to the heart, and I think it was very effective. Okay, but he didn't talk to the stomach. And I think that is where he's failing right now.
Yeah,
I've said this before, much to your bewilderment, maybe amusement, is that he needs to go to the left of Biden on helping the middle class and working class people. He has a bully pulpit. He needs to get out there and say, I'm not going to rest until we take care of these people. Let me give you a very simple example. Threatening to defund school districts if they don't open up. That is the worst thing you can do. Do it the other way around. How much money you need to open up to be safe? See, it should have been the other way around. And instead of threatening people, he should have said, I want all American kids to go to school because it impacts their lives in so many different ways, and their parents that need to work. And maybe their parents aren't good at homeschooling. There's so many things surrounding that issue, and he could have just gone to the left and said, "Look, how much do you need?
Yeah.
This is my administration is determined for September kids to go to school, and we're going to do everything in our power." Instead of saying we're going to defund you, it's just dumb.
Yeah. Can I just make one quick point, which is that it is a point I have made on previous programs, which is that the US economy is looking stronger than a lot of people expected. We've seen unemployment fall for 2 consecutive months. Industrial production is rising. And in fact, consumer spending is rising. So if these trends continue, and it does so much depend on what happens with the pandemic, then, as I said, come August, sentiment may be entirely different.
Well, again, I'm not going to disagree with what you just said, but I want to, looking at rents and looking at renting and paying your mortgage here, Alex, it's not going to take too much longer for things to start hitting each other like not dominoes. Well, okay, it's going to take. That's going to be a major issue right there.
Well, indeed,
because I mean, you can give people just enough money to eat, which is kind of pathetic for the richest country in the world. Okay, but I mean, when it comes to shelter and things like that, that's going to start adding on. Okay, exponentially, because it starts hitting every single financial institution as you go up. I think that needs to be addressed. It's very serious because that can spin out of control, and that's going to be very, very dangerous. And I don't think it's being considered enough. Okay, I'm just at a complete loss with Mitch McConnell and all the rest of them saying, well, we'll have to see how it works out. Okay. Well, if you're living in a multi-million-dollar mansion and you have your own private security, and even if you lose in November, you're going to be sitting on boards of 5 or 6 different corporations. I mean, there's just, I just have to say, there's a lack of empathy from the political elite. It's extraordinary. Well, it really is. You already mentioned, it's kind of like the French Revolution, let them eat cake.
Well, the Republican establishment has been a completely disastrous. I mean, I think it's quite clear now that they never really supported Trump at all.
Yep.
For me, I have to say, the revelations that came out of the House Intelligence Committee about how way back in mid-2018 they all knew, all the Republicans, everybody in Congress knew that Russiagate was a nonsense. And you had all this chorus of Republican dignitaries say, you know, you've got to go and support Mueller, and Mueller must be allowed to do his business and all of this.
Get rid of Mueller, we'll impeach Trump.
Yeah, all that kind of thing. I mean, you know, when you have people like that, you know, they are not Donald Trump's friends. They're not the American people's friends either. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, supporting Donald Trump makes you the friend of the American people, but I mean, it's clear that we are dealing with an establishment that is completely self-interested, that doesn't look beyond the parapet.
You spend 80 or 90% of your time on the phone with your donors. That's what they do.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that is, for me, one of the most big educations of the last year, and especially this year, you know, because all of this information has come out, and it stuns me actually, you know, that they knew all along that, well, they knew at least from 2018 that this was all nonsense, and yet still they put America through it.
Yeah, I really wish Trump would rule more by, it's kind of strange for me to say, more by executive order than just wait for the Republicans and.
Well, I think you should. I mean, I think
the Senate and the Congress. Yeah.
But see, that would separate him from all this. You're absolutely right.
He doesn't do it enough. Obama, I think, did it more. Is that right?
Yeah, he signed more executive orders than any other president. But my point is that, you know, Obama wasn't in the middle of a crisis. Okay, he was part of a managed transfer of wealth from the middle class to the rich. That was his job, and that's why they allowed him to this day. Okay, but we're in a pandemic where we could be in. We're certainly in a recession. We don't know to what degree. We don't know if it's certainly not going to be a V. Okay, we have to understand what kind of view it's going to be. This is a crisis. And we have a growing Cold War with China. I mean, this is an extraordinary time. He needs to act extraordinarily, okay? And he needs to get pen and paper and start signing these executive orders and address the American people directly and say, I am doing this because the country is in crisis, and I'm not going to let this continue under my watch. Those words could turn the corner for him. Why he doesn't do it, I don't know.
Well, and why doesn't he, you know, become even more, take the attack even more to some of his opponents? I mean,
like he did Alexander in 2016, going against Marco Rubio and going against Ted Cruz and going against all the Republicans and taking it to them.
What does he have to lose?
What does he have to lose? Exactly. I mean, I don't understand this. I mean, all this talk about, you know, being the unity candidate. Unity is a huge mistake, because they're not interested in uniting behind him. They want to destroy him. So he should take the battle to them. You should point out, for example, that, you know, Peter was talking about rents. I was reading somewhere that, you know, half of rents in New York City are unpaid. Well, who's responsible for that? The mayor of New York is responsible for that, whose management, the mayor and the governor of New York, whose management of the pandemic crisis in New York, in the city and the state, was totally disastrous. Both of them are Democrats. They're nothing to do with Trump. You actually look at what de Blasio was doing. It was terrible. And now he's, 26 policemen to guard his thing, even though, you know, crime is out of control. He should be all guns blazing going after them all the time, relentlessly. He's done it to some extent with what's been going on in Portland, but he is still far too passive.
All right, let's get to the super chats, wrap up the live stream. Got about 10 super chats here. Let me run through them.
These libertarians.
Yep. From.
Are we still here?
Yeah. Are you there, Peter?
Yeah.
Peter's breaking up a little.
He's breaking up a little. Okay,
it's a bit wobbly.
All right, well, we'll run through the super chats and wrap up the live stream. I mean, we can hear you, Peter. Your image is coming on and off.
On and off, yeah.
All right, from Shaker AG69. Hi, gentlemen. Would you consider making Duran dolls for sale with a collectible Peter and added extras such as watch winders and mini magic mugs?
Well, we've got smaller magic mugs now. We've got. This is Greece, by the way, so you can see that they are actually smaller. But we could make it even smaller still.
But we've got the enamel mugs too.
The enamel mugs. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what we can source.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can source. What we can do.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for this.
One shot, espresso cups might be an idea. I mean,
watch winders.
Just say watch winders is what Peter knows all about. I mean, he's got this these extraordinary machines that keep his automatic watches going. Hey, Peter, you can tell us about them.
I mean, I think Peter's coming in and out of the stream.
Watch winders is extraordinary devices. They really look amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we lost Peter for a little bit, but let's run through the.
Any ideas for our shop are completely welcome. We will take them very much into account, and in fact, we are very responsive. And we're talking about flags. As I said, this is Britain. This is Britain, and I've got Australia somewhere also, and the United States. Anybody wants to suggest? And Alex, I think you've got Canada on your shirt, if I'm right.
On my shirt, and Serbia.
Well, there you go. If anybody wants to suggest anything more, please do.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's see. Peter's trying to get back on.
Yeah.
Steve B says, for Patriot Legacy Link, I've ordered 2 Patriot torches. Can't wait. They're great, great flashlights.
And here they are, as you can see, great flashlights. Yeah.
You'll love them. All right, as we wait for Peter to get back on, let's run through the super chats. Biden president from Toilet Sauce. Biden president, Hillary VP. Biden gets inaugurated. The next day he dies. Surprise, surprise. Hillary as president. The plan is too simple to fail. It wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it really would be. I mean, can I just say, I mean, that's the sort of thing that used to happen in the last days of Rome. If you read, Roman history of, the sort of 4th and 5th century AD, that's exactly what happened. You just sort of bring an emperor in name only, and then, you dispose of him very quickly, put someone else. So, maybe that's where the US is going. I hope not. I sincerely and truly hope not.
Yeah. All right. Peter's still trying to log on. Can you hear us, Peter?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Okay, he can hear us, but we just can't see his picture.
Picture.
All right. From Flying Boar, update on China, India. Did China get scared of India or what?
No, I think what has happened, I think this story has been very misreported, actually, because Modi, who's the Indian Prime Minister, admitted that it was an Indian military which actually, crossed the border or the line of control. So it was in a way, I'm not saying that, people in New Delhi planned this, but the Chinese were responding to something that the Indians did. They both pulled back, and the two sides are now apparently talking, and there's been a de-escalation on the border. There's been a lot of commentary in India, a lot of very excited commentary. I don't think this thing is actually as out of control as people think. And I think the Chinese basically reacted in the way they usually do, very calmly and very, with restraint, in a situation where they know themselves to be in a strong position.
All right, 1 second. I'm messaging Peter. I think Peter is going to sign off. We have like five more super chats, but the link keeps on breaking up. So let's run through these super chats.
Fine.
And Peter will, if he can make it back on, we'll make it back on. If not, we'll also sign off and wrap up the live stream.
Right.
From Flying Boar, progressives are frauds. Look at their behavior during the Ukraine crisis in 2014. For example, Senator Chris Murphy.
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, this is my input. I mean, I think that there are progressives who are, a very small group of people. People like Caitlin Johnson, people like the people who write for antiwar.com. Those sorts of people are not your typical progressive. And most of what we see, and which is called progressives in the United States and in Britain, seems to me just basically about taking control of everything. I mean, control of the media space, control of the cultural world, control of, the economic levers, but it's not about anything that is straightforward. It's not about any real agenda to help people. And that's, of course, the rhetoric is anti-elitist and the reality is completely elitist. That's what it seems to me to be.
All right. From Leon Jacob, £5 super chat. Thank you for preserving my sanity, guys. You're definitely a beacon in these dark times. Thank you very much for that super chat, Leon. We really appreciate it. From Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Roger Stone just got himself into another controversy during a radio interview.
I've heard about it. I haven't heard the interview itself.
Okay, well, yeah.
We need to do it. I mean, foolish.
Get
if he did what he's alleged, then I mean, extremely foolish of him.
Yeah. All right. From Soren Bisgard, again, 3,000. Thank you very much, Soren, for that super chat. We really appreciate it. From Edward Bernays, $9.99 super chat. Neither Dems nor Republicans can repair the economy. People are losing jobs. Fed rests printing money. Peter Lavelle always nails it.
I think that's absolutely right. I don't think either the Republicans or the Democrats have a plan. I mean, I'm talking about the establishment parties. And what a tragedy that is, because the United States has all the means available to pull itself together and to really succeed again economically. I mean, the United States has tremendous resources in technology, in engineering, in skilled workers. It could certainly do it. It would take perhaps, a 5-year, 10-year period to do it, but it could be done. All I will say about it is this: maybe Trump can't do it. Maybe he's not the person who has the managerial skills to do it, but at least he talks about it sometimes. Biden doesn't even do that. You're never going to get it. You're never going to see it happen with Biden. It's just not going to happen.
All right. From Flying Boar, $5 super chat. How long will it take for Nord Stream 2 to complete?
Well, I understand that it's about 96% completed. They're going to start pipelaying in August. I'm going to make a guess that it will be basically a done thing by late autumn.
All right. From Flying Boar, update on Libya and what's going on in Syria.
Well, Libya, I gather, I'm sorry, there's been somebody at my door at the moment, but Libya, I gather, is a standoff. The Egyptians have basically said that the Libyan forces, the Libyan government, the internationally backed government, the Turkish backed government, they're not allowed to advance beyond Sirte. And there was an air attack. There was an air attack on a on a Turkish base. I'm sorry, there's all sorts of things going on the Turkish base by probably the Egyptian Air Force. That's a guess, which seems to have thrown things back again. So at the moment, things are stable in Libya, but it's a very unstable stability.
In
Libya,
Syria.
And now in Syria, what we have is more Turkish troops being sent into Syria. We had an attack on the Turkish-Russian joint patrol by some jihadi fighters. There's news this morning that there's another Turkish-Russian patrol along one of the road links in Idlib province. So all sorts of things are happening at the moment in Idlib because the underlying problems there have not been resolved.
All right, from Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Who's stronger militarily and economically, India or China?
Oh no, there's no comparison. China is immeasurably stronger. I mean, its economy is multiples bigger than India's is, and they have a much more effective military at a technological level. Now, India, I should say, I don't discount the Indian military at all. It's a nuclear power. It's got some very powerful air assets, but it doesn't have the kind of depth of resources that China does. And in fact, as I understand it, the gap is growing. So the Indians are at the moment trying to supplement their position by buying new military units from new military equipment from Russia. Paradoxically, they've put in another order for MiG-29 fighters, but whatever they buy, it's not going to match what China has.
All right. And the final super chat from Brando Commando, update on Libya. You kind of gave an update already, Alexander. And do you think Bolsonaro will win re-election?
Huge question. I'm afraid Brazilian politics, I don't know so well. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I have to say this about Bolsonaro. I don't see what the opposition to him is. I mean, by that, I mean, I can see that there's lots of people who don't like him in Brazil. There's lots of resistance to him all over the place. But I don't see yet who the Brazilian Biden, if I can put it like that, is, who they're going to put up to stand against him. So you know, I don't know Brazilian politics. I don't want to get too deeply into that discussion. I think from what I've heard, Bolsonaro himself has made multiple mistakes. I'm not anyway saying that he's the right person for Brazil, but at this moment in time, I see no real opposition to him.
All right, that's it for this live stream. Thank you to Peter Lavelle in Moscow, who had to sign off early. And thank you to Alexander Mercuris in London. Alexander, real quick, it's Monday. What are you taking a look at this week? And we'll sign off.
Well, we have in Britain a big report coming out about connections between Boris Johnson and the Russians. I don't take that very seriously, to be honest. But it may have implications both for British relations with Russia and for the stability of Boris Johnson's government. So we need to, obviously that's something we need to look at. We need to look at also. But overall, the other big story, the huge story, we've done a video on this, is the EU Council meeting that's going on at the moment. And we'll see whether or not Merkel manages to kick the can a little further down the road, as she's always managed, and what's going to come of it. The EU is a disaster that gets worse every day, but just seems to continue. It's like watching a horror film that never ends and which you can't leave. It's a sort of tragic thing. But we will obviously have to look at that because it seems to me it's the big story at the moment.
All right. And final super chat from Flying Boar. Russia should tell Turkey enough is enough on Idlib. It should have taken long time ago.
I think a lot of people in Russia, by the way, think the same thing. Can I just say, there is a residual feeling in Russia, particularly I understand amongst military people, of a great deal of resentment towards Turkey. And a feeling that the diplomats and the foreign ministry and the people around Putin have been far too accommodating to the Turks than they should have been. And
they shot down a Russian
plane.
They killed a Russian ambassador.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think
exactly. And now,
they've been very accommodating.
Oh, exactly. And then there's the Hagia Sophia business, which we did a video about too. So I mean, this is not to be discounted. And the only time I've ever seen the Russian military all but criticize Putin was about 2 years ago, when Palmyra was briefly retaken by ISIS. And a couple of retired military officers came out and basically said that it was because Putin was wasting his time talking to the Turks and negotiating with them instead of taking the strong action that he should have done. And it created quite a flap in Russia, which wasn't widely noticed. So I think that is a sentiment which many, many people in Russia share. But I think Putin is committed for the moment to his policy of having a working relationship with the Turks, with Erdogan, because I think he sees that this fits in with his greater picture, and I think it's also the line that the Chinese are following. So it's a criticism you hear made in Russia, and which I suspect is going to continue to build. I don't think it's going to lead to Putin changing his policy for the moment.
Greater picture of what with regards to?
Well, I think what Putin wants to do is I think he still thinks he needs Turkey to try to stabilize the situation in Syria. I think he's still committed to that. But I think it's also energy. I think there are the energy politics now. He wants to complete Turk's stream. He wants to build the, the sort of the sub-streams across the Balkans. He feels that he needs Erdogan's assistance to doing all of that. And I think also at some levels, I think he also wants Turkish help to keep the situation in the Caucasus stable, in Central Asia stable, all of those things. So I think he's playing a very complicated game. I think there are growing criticisms of it. I think for the moment he's committed to persisting with it. We'll see how it turns out.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you guys, to everyone who joined us on this live stream. Thank you for your comments, for the chat, for the super chats. We really appreciate it. Please check us out on PayPal, on Patreon, and on Subscribestar. Please donate to us there as well. Your donations really help out this channel a whole lot, and we really appreciate the donations, all the donations we get. And of course, the Duran shop. You'll see some of the mugs Alexander is holding up. You got the UK, you got Australia, you got the US over there.
The US,
got, what are the new shirts with Canada on there, and
absolutely.
I've got
Greece,
with Serbia as well, and Greece,
and of course don't forget our friends,
and of course
Patriotic Legacy.
Our friends at the Patriotic Legacy. You'll find the link for the Patriotic Legacy as well in the description box down below, and a 20% discount code when you use Duran20. You'll find the link for the Duran shop as well. Please please share the channel with everybody. We need your help, guys, so we can continue to broadcast and continue to run this channel. Thank you to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Have a really, really good Monday and a good week. Alexander, take care. Indeed. Have a good day.
You too, and good day to all our viewers and a good week for all of you.